Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload, and you'll never miss a story again. It all started with a wrong number. Or at least, that's what I thought when my wife's phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. while she slept beside me, curled up like nothing in the world was out of place. I wouldn't have checked it normally, but it kept buzzing 4 times in under a minute. And when I glanced at the screen just to make sure it wasn't something serious, the preview was enough to freeze the blood in my chest. I miss your laugh. He doesn't know, right? At first I assumed it was spam, a scam, something meaningless. But then the next message came in. I hate how we have to sneak around. When can I see you again? My wife stirred beside me, mumbling something in her sleep. I didn't move. I stared at her, at the phone, at the life I thought I understood. Her name is Elise. We'd been married for 7 years. No kids by choice. 2 careers, 1 house, 3 shared streaming accounts, and 100 small routines that made us feel like partners. We had dinner together 5 nights a week. We argued about laundry, made up over wine, and shared inside jokes no one else would get. Or so I thought. That night, I didn't wake her. I didn't confront her. I didn't even breathe too loudly. I just took her phone, took a picture of the messages, and emailed them to myself. Quietly, calmly. Then I slipped out of bed, went to the kitchen, and stood in the dark for almost an hour, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles ached. I wasn't the type to yell. I wasn't the type to throw things. Elise once said she loved how safe she felt with me, how steady. But in that moment, something cracked. Not in an explosive way, more like a fracture deep in the foundation. I went back to bed and pretended to sleep. When morning came, Elise got up like nothing had happened, made coffee, scrolled through the news, kissed me on the cheek before leaving for work. I stared at the door after she left, hearing it shut with the same casual certainty it always had. That's when I realized something terrifying. She didn't think I'd ever leave her, and worse, she might have been right. I worked remotely, which meant I had time. Time to plan, time to think, time to watch. I wasn't sure who the messages were from, but I had a feeling. Elise had recently started working on a big project at her architecture firm. Lots of late nights, new clients. Her enthusiasm had shifted from our weekends to her pitch decks. I knew what I had to do. I didn't go through her phone again. Instead, I started paying attention to the gaps. Her stories that didn't quite line up. The nights she came home too tired to talk. The way she always seemed to have her phone face down. I didn't ask questions. I just listened. The more I watched, the more I realized how carefully she'd built a second life just out of my reach. She wasn't clumsy, she wasn't sloppy, she was deliberate, always 3 steps ahead. And the truth was, I had no idea how long it had been going on. So I stopped trying to find answers and started building my exit. I contacted a lawyer, quietly, told him I wasn't ready to file yet. I just wanted to understand my options. He told me what I needed to hear. Then I opened a new bank account. I started moving my direct deposit slowly, small amounts I didn't want her to notice. I rented a small storage unit, began moving out my important documents, keepsakes, everything I wanted to keep. I even took photos of our house, every room, every corner. Not because I missed it, but because I wanted to remember what I was leaving behind. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how good I'd been at ignoring it. One night, Elise came home a little drunk, lipstick smudged, hair windblown. She collapsed on the couch beside me, laughing about something one of her coworkers had said. I asked her if she had a good time. She smiled. We had drinks after the presentation. It went really well. She didn't lie with words, she lied with ease. Later that night, while she showered, I checked her laptop. It was password protected, new password. I smiled. She was covering her tracks now. That told me everything I needed to know. The next day, I called in a favor. A friend of mine worked in IT security. I told him I needed help tracing some metadata, nothing shady, just a few email headers, a location check. He didn't ask too many questions. Within 48 hours, I had a name. Derek Chambers, mid-40s, married, VP at Elise's firm, wife and 2 kids, lived across town, big house, big smile on LinkedIn. Bigger secrets, apparently. I looked at his social media, his family photos, his company headshots. I stared at his wife's name, Laura Chambers. I didn't message her. Not yet. Instead, I made copies of everything, printed screenshots, built a quiet archive, just in case. I needed one final piece before I made my move. Elise had a work retreat scheduled for the following weekend. Out of town, 2 nights. She said it was mandatory. I smiled, kissed her goodbye, and waved from the door. Then I followed her. Not like in the movies, no disguises, no rented cars. I just checked into the same hotel, 1 floor above her, watched her meet Derek in the lobby, saw the way their hands brushed, the way their bodies leaned too close. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the hallway outside their room, listening, thinking. When they left for dinner, I slipped an envelope under the door. Inside was a photo of Elise asleep in our bed the morning after the first messages arrived. Nothing threatening, no note, just a message, "I see you now." By the time Elise came home 2 days later, I was gone. No fight, no confrontation, no goodbye. Just an empty closet on my side and a kitchen drawer missing the things I valued most. I left her a note, handwritten. "You once said I was the calm in your storm. You mistook my silence for weakness. But calm is just the part before the tide turns." Then I turned off my phone and disappeared. To her, I vanished. To me, I finally arrived. Elise didn't call that first day. Maybe she assumed I was being dramatic, that I'd storm back in after I cooled off, that the man she thought she knew, the man who always gave her the benefit of the doubt, wouldn't just disappear without a word. But 2 days passed, then 3. No texts, no calls from me, no clues, and she started to panic. On the 4th day, I finally powered my phone back on. There were 15 missed calls, 6 voicemails, and a string of messages all sent within hours of each other. Her tone changed quickly, from confused to anxious to borderline desperate. "Where are you? Can we talk? I came home and everything was gone. You can't just leave like this. I don't understand what's happening." And finally, "Please, I'm sorry." It was the first time I'd heard her say that word without being prompted, but I didn't respond. Not yet. Not when she still believed she held the power. She didn't know I had already seen everything. The retreat, the texts, the dinners that weren't team bonding like she claimed. The photos I had taken of her with Derek, their hands brushing, her laugh tilted toward him, the way she looked up at him like he hung the moon. I didn't want vengeance in the way most people think of it. I didn't want to ruin her life. I wanted her to see mine thrive without her in it. So while she unraveled, I stayed quiet. Moved into a furnished rental across town, started working out again. Cooking meals I actually enjoyed. Playing music on speakers instead of keeping everything quiet to match her mood. It was the little things that made me realize how much of myself I had dimmed to keep her comfortable. By the end of the 2nd week, Elise showed up at my office. I had made sure the front desk knew not to let her up. But she waited in the lobby for hours, according to the receptionist. She just sat there, legs crossed, back straight, like she could still control how the world saw her even as it fell apart. She left a note for me. "You can't end 7 years with silence." But I could, and I had. It wasn't until the 3rd week that she did the one thing I hadn't expected. She reached out to Laura Chambers, the wife of the man she'd been sneaking around with. I hadn't tipped Laura off. I didn't need to. Elise did it for me, maybe hoping to get ahead of something, to spin it, to cover her own tracks. But Laura, it turned out, wasn't stupid. She contacted me directly the next day. Her message was short. "We should talk. I think our spouses have been lying to both of us. Coffee?" We met at a quiet cafe on a weekday morning. She was composed, sharp-eyed, dressed like she had just walked out of a law firm, and she had. She ordered a black coffee and got straight to the point. I found hotel receipts, emails, photos on an old iPad he thought I didn't know still synced. I nodded slowly. "I have text messages and photos from the retreat." She pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. So did I. We slid them across to each other like 2 spies meeting at a drop site. When she looked through the materials, her mouth tightened, but she didn't cry, she just nodded. "Figures," she muttered. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said something that stuck with me. "I don't want to burn everything down. I just don't want him to think I didn't notice." I understood that feeling better than I could explain, so we made a pact. She'd deal with Derek her way. I'd deal with Elise mine. Quietly, strategically, No explosions, just clarity and consequence. That weekend, Elise emailed me a long letter. It was the kind of thing that would have broken me 6 months earlier. Apologies wrapped in nostalgia. Memories she suddenly remembered. How she missed my laugh. How she never meant to hurt me. How Derek was a mistake. She ended it with, "I want to try again, please. I'm willing to do anything." I didn't respond. Instead, I sent a formal reply through my lawyer. I was filing for divorce. The silence that followed was louder than any scream she could have let out. She called me nonstop for days after that. Voicemails, emails, even showing up outside the building again. But I didn't break. My attorney handled everything. I kept it clean, emotionless, documented. We'd built our lives around a neat little financial structure. But what Elise hadn't realized was how much I'd contributed. How many of the assets were in my name. How much of the savings she thought she'd have access to were already protected. She came into the process thinking she'd walk away with at least half. But as the paperwork moved forward, reality hit her hard. Her lawyer called mine in disbelief. Then Elise requested a meeting, just the two of us. I agreed. We met at the park we used to go to when we first moved to the city. It was late afternoon, the light cutting through the trees, kids playing in the distance. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, just dimmer. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. I sat on the bench beside her but kept a gap between us. "Because you made your choice. I'm just making mine." I said I was sorry. "And I heard you, but forgiveness doesn't come with reinstatement." She looked away. "I didn't think you'd ever actually leave." I smiled. "That was your mistake." Her voice cracked a little. "I thought you loved me." "I did, deeply, enough to walk away the moment you stopped loving me back." She went quiet. The wind rustled the trees. A dog barked nearby. Then she said the thing I think she'd been holding on to for weeks. "Do you think we'll ever be okay again?" I didn't hesitate. No. Because even if we could speak politely, even if she eventually moved on, even if the paperwork finalized and our paths crossed again, we'd never go back. Some lines once crossed stay visible forever. She stood up without another word. I watched. Her walk away, this time not with bitterness or pain, but with acceptance. I had let go of the version of her I used to love, and I wasn't chasing after the version she had become. That night I went home, poured a glass of wine, and sat on the balcony of my new place. The city lights stretched out before me like a reminder that life doesn't end just because a chapter does. It just turns the page. And sometimes the best revenge isn't fire and fury. It's calm. It's silence. It's showing someone who underestimated you that you didn't just survive without them. You thrived. Time doesn't always heal. Sometimes it just exposes. In the months that followed our divorce, Elise faded further into the background of my life. Not because I erased her, but because I simply stopped checking for her shadow. There was no sudden click of closure, no big moment when I felt completely free. Just a slow, steady exhale I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. The silence between us became permanent. She didn't reach out again after that last meeting in the park. And I didn't go looking for her. There was nothing left to say. But the world has a strange way of looping back. It was a Tuesday when I ran into Derek Chambers, not in some dramatic, staged way. I was at a coffee shop near my new place, halfway through a book and a cappuccino when I saw him come in. He looked tired, suit rumpled, eyes dull like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. He didn't recognize me at first. I almost let him walk past. But something in me said, "Not this time." He caught my eye when I stood. His expression flickered, first surprise, then discomfort, then something like guilt. "Ethan," he said, trying for casual. I nodded. "Derek." He shifted on his feet. "Didn't expect to see you here. I live nearby now." He paused, like he didn't know what to say next. I let the silence stretch until he caved. "Look," he said, "I didn't mean for things to happen the way they did. Elise and it wasn't planned." I raised an eyebrow. Cheating rarely is. "But thanks for the clarification." He winced. "She said you left, just walked away." "I did." "That's harsh." I sipped my coffee. No harsher than betraying someone who trusted you. He opened his mouth, but I stopped him with a look. I'm not here to make you feel worse, Derek. Honestly, I don't care anymore. You did what you did. She did what she did. And I did what I had to. He looked down at the floor. How's Laura? I asked casually. His jaw tensed. She's gone, took the kids, moved back to Ohio. I'm sorry. He nodded, but I wasn't sure if it was gratitude or defeat. That was the moment I realized something important. I didn't hate him. Not anymore. I didn't pity him either. What I felt was even quieter than indifference. I felt nothing. And that, more than any insult or confrontation, was the real closure. A week later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Elise had left the firm. Rumors swirled. Some said she'd resigned, others whispered she'd been pushed out quietly. Derek kept his job, barely, but the dynamic had shifted. Their so-called affair had left scorch marks even after the flames had died out. She tried freelancing, I heard, took on small projects, bounced around clients, but without the network she'd built during our marriage and the stability I'd quietly provided, she struggled to stay afloat. Again, I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile at her downfall. I simply moved forward. Harper and I had kept things light over the past few months. We hiked, cooked together, traded playlists. But as time passed, it stopped feeling temporary. She didn't try to fill a space Elise left behind. She made her own. Her presence didn't feel like a distraction. It felt like peace. One night, she looked at me across the table and said, "You're different lately." Different how? Lighter. Not like you're trying to prove something to anyone. I thought about that. And she was right. I had nothing left to prove, to Elise, to Derek, to anyone. I'd done my part, I'd taken my hits, and I'd walked away without stooping to their level. Revenge, I realized, isn't about hurting someone back. It's about refusing to let them continue hurting you. It's about saying, you don't get to take up space in my life anymore. A few months later, Elise emailed me again. The subject line was blank. The message was short. I saw a photo of you and her. You look happy. Really happy. I hope she knows what she has. I'm sorry, Ethan. For everything. I truly am. This time, I didn't delete it. But I didn't reply either. She didn't need my forgiveness to move on. And I didn't need her words to validate my healing. A year to the day after I left her, I stood in my new apartment looking out over the city lights. The world had shifted. I had shifted. The quiet man Elise once called too predictable had changed. Not by force, but by choice. I had built a new life from the ground up. Not because she broke me, but because I finally realized I didn't owe anyone my silence. In the end, I didn't leave Elise to hurt her. I left her to save myself. And when people ask me what happened to our marriage, I don't go into detail. I don't share the texts or the photos or the timeline of betrayal. I just say, she underestimated how much peace matters to me. Because it does. Peace is more valuable than justice, more permanent than rage, more powerful than any revenge I could have imagined. It's knowing I let go when it was hardest. It's building something beautiful in the ruins. It's loving someone new without carrying the weight of the past, and that's what Elise never understood. When I walked away, it wasn't because I was weak. It was because I was finally strong enough to stop settling for less. And maybe one day she'll understand that, but even if she doesn't, it doesn't matter. I'm already too far gone to look back. Too whole to break again. Too free to ever give someone else the power to define me. That's not just survival. That's victory, the kind that doesn't need applause, just silence.